how did you ever get started in the equipment leasing business? I think you were in the equipment business at one point.
Well, I got started, I was working for a company called Fabritech Memories back in 1972. And it was a little company, public company out of Minneapolis. And we sold add-on memories to IBM 360 CPUs. And in going out and selling memory, you'd go into shops and different clients, and they wouldn't need the memory, but they might need a CPU, or they might need a printer or a tape drive or a disk drive. And early on, I brokered a few machines, and one of the first people that I met in the business, because he was relatively new to, he was only 2 years, it was a brand new business in those days, was a guy by Ken Ponticus. And Ken, I couldn't find any of these machines. I didn't know where to buy them, nor did I have the money to buy them. And I went to Ken and said, "Ken, I have this deal for 2 CPUs or whatever," and he'd say, "Fine, I'll back you. We'll split the profit, and we'll work out some profit arrangement that we worked, and go get the order." And I get the order, and it was never done in Comdisco's name. It was always done in my name, and that's how we started our company.
Did you know Ken Ponticus prior to that?
Pardon, I didn't hear you, Bobby.
Did you know Ken Ponticus prior to that?
No, I did not. I was introduced to him. Originally. My original business partner, who has been out of the business since 1979, who was my boss at Fabritech, a gentleman by the name of Bill McCain. Bill McCain owned a service bureau by the old definition of a service bureau, just did data processing work for smaller clients in Oklahoma City. And they got in some trouble with one of their clients, trouble meaning they were running out of money.
Right.
And they the client they couldn't perform the work for this client, so they had to buy him a CPU. And they went in the marketplace to buy the CPU, and the way the story was told to me is they went in Computer World, and in those days there were only 3 companies advertising in Computer World. And one of them was Computer Discount, which was the predecessor to Comdisco. And Bill picked up the phone and called up there, and there were only a handful of employees, and said, "I got to buy a 360-30 for a client." And Bill met Ken right away. And Ken supplied that machine, and Bill supplied the machine to his client. And then, obviously, after that, Bill got out of the service bureau business and that business, and we were working for Fabritech. And when I started needing to broker machines, Bill introduced me to Ken, and we did a number of deals with Comdisco in the early days. Ken and I did a tremendous amount of business together. Big machines, little machines. And we had no money to do any leasing at that time. It was a pure brokerage business. And when we got into the leasing business, the way we got into the leasing business is because in the mid-70s, IBM started giving purchase credits against rental payments. So this was before there was no IBM Credit Corporation. Everything was rental. So if you bought, if a machine had a list price of $1 million and had a rental price of $30,000, you could accrue half of your rent, which would be $15,000, up to a maximum of 50% of the purchase price. So when the machine got to $500,000, there was no more credits going down, and the rent stayed at $30,000. So clients would, plus in those days, IBM used to charge an extra use charge, that a meter on the processors, anything over 176 hours, you paid a mileage charge. So you were paying extra to use your machine more than one shift, basically. And so what happened was we went into the client and bought the machine for $500,000, leased it back to him for, instead of $30,000, $10,000. And the maintenance and everything else was all guaranteed. And that's how all of us got in the leasing business originally. It was all on purchase credits. We didn't do new machines in those days because the new machines were all tax deals, and most of those guys were doing business with the big finance companies who were doing the tax deals. ITEL was in the business then, a company by the name of ITEL, a company by the name of Finalco was in the business in those days. They were all selling tax shelters, where they got a number of them. I'd have to sit back and think about who they all were. Some of them were insurance companies, but guys like Comdisco and us, we were brokers until we got in. And then once we started building a little portfolio for us, for the computer guys,
right?
The big finance companies were in the business before, but they didn't know how. They didn't understand residuals. Everything they did was for tax purposes.